Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I think that given we've just chatted with Neil Simon about Anne Frank and about the Israeli Hamas war, and I spoke about the Ukrainian fight as well. I think it's probably appropriate to take a couple of minutes and put out my point of view on what's going on geopolitically right now. And I think that really what we have is potentially history repeating itself. And I hate to say that, but I really firmly believe it. And I'm very worried about whether it will continue. I think that if you take a look at Putin and you compare him to Hitler, and you take a look at the invasion of Ukraine and you compare it to the invasion of Poland, there's a lot of similarities. I think that the autocratic, the individual who's imperialistic, thinking that Greater Germany or Greater Russia should rule a far wider area, that are willing to subjugate other peoples, potentially genocide, whether it be of Jews in World War II or Ukrainians in this war. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think the attack in 2014 into eastern Ukraine, Crimea, etc., is very comparable to the takeover of Austria. I think in Czechoslovakia, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think that the invasion, the Blitzkrieg almost invasion, where they tried to take over Kyiv in a couple of days, about a year and a half ago, February of 2022, has a lot of similarities to the invasion of Poland. And I think that some of the troubles, some of the issues, some of the things that are happening in the Middle East have got some comparisons to what happened in the Middle East in World War II, with Italy taking advantage of what they saw, a disarray in the balance of the world, in particular Europe, to expand dramatically in the Middle East and start a second front, which was very beneficial to Germany at the time. And I think that if you think that Hamas and Iran are associated with Russia, it makes a ton of sense from a timing standpoint, and it has. To a great extent, taken American attention, particularly the Republican Party's attention, off of what's going on in Ukraine and onto the Israeli-Hamas issue. I thought what happened in October with Hamas was one of the most reprehensible things that you can imagine in history. Attacking, raping, taking hostages, murder, not of soldiers, but of civilians, of whole kibbutzes slaughtered. It's just unthinkable that anyone could have that kind of disregard for human life, even if it is human life that you disagree with. But these were not soldiers. These were not militants. These were people that were living a communal life in a kibbutz, and kids celebrating in a music festival. And to rape them, to slaughter them, to murder them, and to take some of them as hostage is against everything that we believe of from a humanity standpoint. And I firmly believe this wasn't done for any military purpose. It was done to create terrorism, to create a war for the generations, if not forever, between the Jewish people, Israel, and Palestinian people and Hamas. I think that there are so many Palestinians that are willing to and would support peace, whether it be a two-state solution or something. But after Israeli attacks, as they would be expected to attack Gaza, it's almost as if Hamas wants a whole bunch of Palestinians to die, such that they can get their brothers and sisters to hate Israel and create a generation of new terrorists. And I think, again, there's similarities. The Blitzkrieg, the attack on London, where we were just indiscriminately killing civilians for terrorism benefits, not military targets. I think that Iran and Hamas are in concert with Russia. And my biggest concern is that China plays the role of Japan in World War III. if you think about why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December, what was it, 40? It was a long time after. I had to check and correct myself. Actually, December 7th, 1941. It was a full year and a half later that that Japan took advantage of the disarray in Europe, the attention of the world on what was going on in Europe, to attack Pearl Harbor and the Seventh Fleet of the United States Navy. If you believe that China is similarly autocratic, similarly imperialistic, and they believe firmly that Taiwan is part of China, and if they were never going to get it through non-military ways, what's the best time to attack? It would be now. To have another Pearl Harbor, effectively, while the world's attention is elsewhere. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am worried that it's going to happen, and that would be history repeating itself, where you've got three fronts: Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, and then Asia Pacific. And so, I think this is not a world war yet, thankfully, but it's got the potential to be it. And so, if we want to learn from history, what would the learnings be? I think that isolationism is a mistake. When you think about the United States, it got very involved in World War II, but only after Pearl Harbor, and it wasn't involved prior to that. It was via Lend-Lease, supplying equipment and arms and maybe some military training. I don't know, but it would be comparable to the role that NATO and the United States and Canada are playing in today's situation. Not dedicating troops, but dedicating money and arms. But then they got directly involved. And there were probably some benefits to waiting the year and a half to get directly involved, in that people that died were not American soldiers. They were other people. But it probably prolonged and caused far more civilian death than otherwise would have happened. I think that we've got to admit that there were supporters of Nazism in the United States, and maybe even in Canada during the 1930s. And I was at a really interesting seminar recently in Boston when I went back to Harvard for my reunion, where a professor compared, the decline of democracy today and the ascent of autocracy and imperialism in a bad way, with what's happening today around the world, and what happened with Nazism. And he read us some annual report letters from major corporations in Germany that initially were very supportive of what the Nazi regime was doing, and questioning some of the foes of Germany. And you know that there were people, Neville Chamberlain, and whole political parties and efforts that believed in appeasement and giving in and giving over land to Hitler. Is the Republican Party, or parts of the Republican Party in the United States, currently going down a similar path? Are the people that are arguing against Israel's, I think, completely justified desire to eradicate Hamas actually making this situation worse, and potentially supporting authoritarianism and barbarism and anti-democratic efforts? In no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that anyone has the right to kill thousands of civilians, but I do believe that Israel not only has the right, but the responsibility to protect its borders and to root out terrorism. You take a look at what the United States did after the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001. And some of that was wrong. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but rooting out the Taliban and particularly Al Qaeda. Rooting out, we didn't actually do that, but attacking and destroying Al Qaeda was the right thing. I think the destruction of ISIS was the right thing. And I think the destruction of Hamas is the right thing, because it's something that we believe in. from our belief in human rights, our belief in dignity, in the rule of law, in democracy, in the right of people to live. And so what's my conclusion here? My conclusion here is we are on the precipice of a major world war. It could be World War III. We got to look at history. And if you wanted to stop things, what would you do? You would make it obvious to China that they can't move, just like we probably tried to make it obvious to Japan that they couldn't move. Maybe we didn't do enough. I think that Canada's role has got to be investing in a navy, investing in military equipment to say that we are part of this situation. I think we need to continue what we're doing in Eastern Europe, but I think we also need to be mindful of our responsibility in the Pacific and in the Arctic. And I think now is the time for us to meet our NATO commitments. If there was ever a time for us in Canada to meet our NATO commitments, now is the time. And I think now is the time for us to say to those people that are arguing either for appeasement in Ukraine with Russia, giving them land that they have no right to, would be comparable to appeasement at Munich by Chamberlain. And I think that while I, again, am not suggesting that we have the right, Israel has the right to kill thousands of innocent Palestinians in Gaza, don't misunderstand me. I do think Israel has not only the right, but the responsibility to root out and eradicate Hamas. And I think we, Western people, democracy-oriented people, freedom-loving people, people that believe in human rights, people that believe in the rule of law, need to stand up to those that are suggesting a permanent ceasefire or appeasement or for sure any anti-Semitic kind of attitudes, and say, no, this is not the world we want. We don't want Hamas, Russia, Iran to be able to attack ISIS, to attack Taliban, to attack Al-Qaeda. We have to root out those people, and we have to make sure that the rule of law, democracy, human rights is fought for. And we need to play our part, and we can't stand by and allow what's happening right now to escalate into World War III. My thoughts. Thanks. Good night, everybody. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM.